My SDS is based on the principal question, how do I see? I take a deep dive into sight and expand on multiple different areas that make up our vision. Spiraling down that path, I also explore specific eye disorders that impact the function of this organ. Starting off with the basic question, why am I even able to see in the first place? Does some kind of magical force allow light to manifest in colorful images? What does the iris do, or the retina retain? Breaking it down, I created a somewhat lifelike model to represent this process. I call it Eyed-Wally because the eyes are kind of looking in two separate directions, but you know what? That's fine. Don't worry about it too much. In the simplest definition, we can see, literally, through light that enters our organ and is turned to images via the brain. Now, if we take this a step further and break it down a bit more, we can look at it this way. Light enters the eye and it hits the retina. Specialized cells known as photoreceptors convert light into electrical impulses. These electrical signals are carried to the brain via the optic nerve. From here, the brain translates these impulses into images we can understand. Now, if we break this down a third time, we'll be getting into a bunch of terms that I'll define later on, mostly specifics of the eye, which I'll categorize, and I'll tell you what the aqueous humor is, or what the retina actually does. So, let's go a step further. Light that has been reflected enters the eye, and first approaches the cornea. As it passes through the cornea, the light is bent by its dome-like shape. After this, the bent light passes through the aqueous humor, a pocket of water-like plasma. From this point on, the iris reacts and changes position as the light travels through the pupil, located at the very center of the eye. The iris is especially interesting, side note here, because it's actually a muscle. It's a colorful part of your eye. It's the brown or the blue or sometimes even the purple. Past this point, the concentrated light hits the retina. The lens plays a very important role in this process, as after the light hits the retina, it focuses the light and adjusts it accordingly. After this, a second adjustment period comes along and inverts the image, making it appear upside down. If we take a peek back to my diagram, if you're not looking at it right now, that's okay. I've included a photo and video of it in the Google Classroom here. You can see our wall-eyed Wallies kind of trying to look at the fries. The fries represents the light. That's what we're looking at in the brain. If you pop off one of the eyeballs, you can actually look inside of wall-eyed Wally's eye. And on the very back, you can see the inverted image of the fries. That's the second adjustment period, where the image is flipped, making it appear upside down. Passing through the vitreous fluid, photoreceptors along the retina recognize the light coming through, converting them into electrical impulses. The sweet spot of the retina, known as the macula, is hit, allowing us to recognize fine details within objects. After this, the electrical signals are received by nerves, traveling through the optic nerve, winding through the optic chiasm, and actually crisscrossing, eventually ending up at the occipital lobe of the brain. This process allows for the brain to translate the information into viable images, of which we can understand. You can see this process through the clear tubes running along from the eye to the brain. Inside, you can see some lights where you can switch on and on through specific switches at the eyes, and that represents the electrical impulses running from the eye to the brain. I find it especially interesting. I thought that was a great way to represent those impulses instead of just saying, hey, it just goes from here to here. And I just wanted some way to visually convey that. As we can see on top of where the brain is labeled, we can see a photo of the fries, right side up again. Of course, the fries in the first place are pretty big, and I couldn't fit another version of the fries onto the brain, also because the image we see isn't completely equal to what we are conceiving. Now, let's take a bit of a deep dive into another part of the eye, specifically looking at the cornea and the different parts that make up it. The cornea, again, is a dome-shaped, transparent outer layer of the eye, and it actually protects the inner part of the eye from debris or germs, and it also allows us to focus light for clear vision. The cornea is made of the epithelium, composed of epithelial cells and basement membrane. It's the part that prevents foreign bodies and allows for the absorption of nutrients, like oxygen and actually our tears. What's unique about the epithelium is that it actually doesn't have any blood vessels, and it uses diffusion in order to gain oxygen. The next part is the Bowman's membrane. This is a thin, transparent layer of collagen. It's right after the epithelium. After this is the stroma, which is actually the thickest layer, made of water and collagen, and it keeps the spherical shape. It also allows for proper passage of light into our eyes. After this is the descendant membrane, and it's a thin layer of collagen fibers. It's the corneal endothelial, and it helps produce collagen for the rest of the eye, and it protects the internal passage of the eye and can actually repair itself. Lastly is the endothelium, and it's the innermost layer of the cornea. It's the thin layer and maintains the clarity of the cornea as the endothelial cells pump excess fluid of the stroma. The eye is composed of 6 muscles, fitting into 2 different categories. On our diagram, I only have 4 of those 6 muscles. Now, this is on each of the eye, and the muscles I have are the rectus muscle group, which include the lateral, medial, superior, and inferior rectus muscles. You can see these on the diagram. They're the red strips, which may or may not be attached now at the present day. There are also 2 other muscles, the oblique muscles, which are superior and inferior. Now, I want to talk about a specific corneal disease, known as herpes simplex eye infection keratitis. This is why I went into a deep dive on the cornea, just so you have a better understanding of its functions. This is the infection of the cornea, caused by herpes simplex virus, and it's spread through direct contact. This can look like the infection of the mouth, getting into the eye in the process. For example, if you were to touch your lips and rub your eye, it's incredibly common and can actually lead to a reactivation of an earlier infection. Symptoms can include redness, watery discharge, pain, blurred vision, or light sensitivity. Its treatment is antiviral medication and eye drops. These are specific eye drops that can be found through pharmacy or can be prescribed by doctors. However, in severe cases, surgery may be required. But some of the downsides of this is there may be permanent scarring, causing future vision problems. So how in the world can you prevent this? How can you not get the herpes simplex virus in the eye? Because it kind of sucks. You can use contact lenses, make sure to consult your eye doctor regularly with checkups, and to make sure to continue to wash your hands. Now, let's take a bit of a hyperfocus on another part of the eye. This is the macula, which is the point at the back of the retina. It's an essential part in allowing focused images to be translated and sent through the optic nerve. It allows you to see objects directly in front of you and picks up final details in your vision. This mostly focuses on your central vision, which is like when you read a book, when you recognize specific colors, picking up faces and facial features. Like if you're going through word searches or your sudokus, they also acknowledge patterns or small movements. As a part of the retina, the macula lutea, this is the specific part, processes light into comprehensible images, turning it into electrical signals that adventure down the optic nerve. It's made of photoreceptor cells, known as rods and cones. They are located at the very center of the retina. If you take my model into account, there's a small point on the very back of the retina, of which you can see a kind of circular shape. That acts as the macula. It's a thin layer of incredibly light-sensitive photoreceptors, and it's a small yellow spot on the back of your eye that's slightly oblong, around 5 millimeters wide. They have an incredibly high concentration of cones. Now, I've mentioned rods and cones a few times. However, what exactly are they? Rods are the parts that process black and white light. They're very useful in dim lighting or seeing at night. This is like recognizing shadows. Next up are your cones. These are your color processes, and they actually make up most of your vision. Take a look around you. Can you spot absolutely anything that's not black and white? If you can, that's the work of your handy-dandy cones. Now, the disorder I'm going to discuss is known as a macular hole. It's an actual hole or thickness defect of the macula. It all starts with the vitreous humor. The vitreous humor is like that jelly-like substance inside the eye. It can shrink over time and change its consistency. When the shrinkage happens, it pulls on the central macula, causing a hole to develop. This spot, the retina, can affect direct, aka your central vision. It's more common in women, and 1.8 people through 100,000 are affected, which shows how rare it is. There are two types of macular holes, primary and secondary. Primary are holes that form without any kind of eye injury, nor due to a medical condition. And secondary macular holes are when the hole occurs due to trauma or a pre-existing condition, like uveitis, or if you have a needle to the eye. If someone whacks you right in your face, right into your eye with a baseball bat, that's an example of a secondary macular hole. However, if you have something like the vitreous humor shrinking, that's an example of primary. Symptoms of this can include your difficulty reading fine print, distorted vision, blurred vision, straight lines appearing kind of wavy or even curvy, dark or blind spots in your vision. And some complications of this can be pretty detrimental. The macular hole itself can increase if not dealt with. You can actually experience retinal detachment, which, trust me, is not fun at all. You can also experience central vision loss. Some other causes can be aging, trauma, like I discussed before, or pre-existing conditions, like being nearsighted, which is a fun fact. Well, not if you're nearsighted. I guess it's more of a fun fact for me since I don't have glasses yet. Treatment can include a vitrectomy, and that's a surgery where a retina specialist removes vitreous gel from the eye. This, along with any itty-bitty specks of tissue that could be increasing tension on the macula. Sterile gas is put into the retinal hole, which puts pressure on the spot, allowing it to heal. This spot is where the retinal hole is, aka the macular hole. However, if the hole is small enough, the specialist may just allow it to heal on its own, while keeping it closely monitored.